Hey, thanks for taking the time to talk with me today. So we're just going to start off with your name and your current position and how long you've been in formal leadership.
My name is Zach Keith, and I work in the Environmental Services Department at Williams. I've been in a leadership role for just coming up on a year and a half, and I currently serve as the manager of strategic projects and performance.
Cool, great. Okay, well, we're just going to go through a few questions. So first, would love to know how you prepared yourself to take on a leadership position. So what skills did you look for to acquire the position? What skills were you focused on developing, whether it was soft skills, technical skills? What did that path look like for you?
First thing I did was buy a book of dad jokes.
Okay.
But really, so at Williams we have a set of core competencies, of course, that apply to every single person in the company. That's why we call them core competencies, because it's everyone from individual contributors to senior leaders.
Sure.
Beyond that, there are core competencies that leaders really need to lean into. So I took a look at those maybe about 2 years. I guess we didn't have them called core competencies back then, but talked to mentors about what are those competencies. About what should I be developing, what are the additional things that would set me apart, what are the behaviors, attitudes, knowledge that I needed to know to be a leader now with an aspiration of wanting to become a leader. So whether that be conflict resolution, it's strategic planning, it's not just technical, right?
Yeah.
But also the technical, being an engineer and leading an engineering type group, technical background's important as well.
Great. So really your focus for leadership was looking at behavioral, more competency based, because you probably already built a lot of the technical skill through your individual contributor roles.
Exactly right, because you're going from being a technical expert to a people leader, and that changes the dynamic of your day-to-day activities.
Makes sense. So obviously going into your first leadership role, you probably had to form somewhat of a leadership philosophy. So what would you say that is for you?
Leadership philosophy. Something I preach to my team a lot that they're probably tired of hearing is anticipate need. And I think that applies to really everything that we should be doing, not just as a good customer or stakeholder within the organization, but as a leader as well. So anticipating need for my team can look like anything from understanding what projects we should be working on, not just today, but in the next year, 2 years. So that allows us to do workload planning, talk about getting new resources on the team if necessary, things like that. But it also looks towards their needs. So if they want to be developed, right? What do they value? So do they like vacation time? Do they like salary bumps, cash rewards, things like that? Do they just want to be recognized in front of our peers? Things like that. So my leadership philosophy is really around making sure I understand what my team values and trying to meet them in that location, I guess.
Awesome. So looking at kind of a organizational team perspective or organization and team perspective, how do you align your team to align vision to action? So you kind of talked about need in terms of kind of anticipating the need. So how then do you take that and motivate them to go and meet those needs in the business?
Ooh, that's a hard one. So something we preach also a lot in our group is understanding the why before we do anything. So taking a step back, don't look at the task as a standalone issue or a standalone deliverable action item, anything like that, right? It's understanding the why first, because a lot of times, especially in an innovative type of space, which we're really trying to be a part of, you need to understand the why behind the end result or the intended end result, not necessarily the task or the form or the whatever you're kind of boiling it down to. So that's what we try to do, is understand the direction that the company is moving in. What are the overall business goals, client goals, customer goals, our goals, right, in terms of product, timeline, maybe it's cost.
Right.
So that's what we try to do.
Awesome. So then in terms of motivating and inspiring your team, I'm sure that has something to do with it, kind of making sure they understand their value and how they fit into the overall why. But is there anything else that you do to kind of continue to motivate your team, especially maybe when they're maybe feeling the bearings or weights of a deadline? What does that look like kind of from a day-to-day perspective?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, because it's very, right now we're right in the middle of that with some immediate deliverables. Pretty much every Friday we've had a deliverable.
Oh, wow.
So beyond the anticipating needs and trying to get ahead of that, which we're talking about beyond that, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of in a sticking point or in a hole. We try to always maybe like come around that person and maybe dedicate some additional attention, time, support, whatever it be in terms of resources, our individual attention and focus, whatever it may be. For example, 2 weeks ago, we had a very immediate deadline that was really stressing out the owner on our team of that product.
Okay.
And so what we did was Thursday morning, so it was a Wednesday, and when it was all coming to a head, Thursday morning, I just told them, hey, let's schedule a meeting. First thing in the morning, we'll all get together. Everyone will drop everything else that isn't as critical for the first 2 hours of the day. We're all going to sit down, including myself as the leader, and literally just do this tedious work together as a team, which I think helped them feel like their feelings were valid. It also gave them the resources they needed to accomplish the goal. And I mean, we also got to joke around a little bit, which always builds some camaraderie and stuff.
Yeah, so kind of motivating through basically making sure that they knew they were supported, kind of getting your hands dirty as a supervisor, and also hopefully having some fun along the way.
Yeah, I mean, there's that there's that cartoon, the difference between a manager and a leader, and that's what we try to make sure we're
that's great. What does a typical day look like for you?
Unfortunately, we have a culture that values meetings, so it's a lot of meetings, to be honest. I try to start every day with dropping, like after I drop myself off at my desk. If I'm the first one there, it's a little bit different. If I'm not the first one there, it's usually going saying hello and greeting the team. But it's a lot of bouncing back and forth, right? So I'm constantly chatting with my team via Microsoft Teams, even in the middle of meetings, just to make sure nothing dies on the vine in my head. Like I get it out of my head and onto a piece of paper, onto their desk or whatever it may be. But yeah, it is one-on-one meetings. I wouldn't say that's daily because it's kind of scheduled weekly. It's individual project team meetings and updates. It's some work time, like digging in. But, yeah.
Okay. Elaborate on a time when you were faced with a failure. And what steps did you take to remedy the situation? Or maybe even a key takeaway, even if it's not kind of remedying the situation, what's just a key takeaway or learning that you took away from that failure?
We can use one semi-recently. So we were preparing board slides. So obviously the impact is high, right? There's a lot of pressure
on the line.
Preparing a product that is concise and very informational. And accurate to the best degree that we can, naturally. Problem is, between the time we build it out and submit it to the actual meeting is like a month.
Wow.
There's a lot of review that goes through that. So by the time we get to that month, the date is all, I wouldn't say wrong, it's just dated, right? And so we had a bit of a conflict in the last board meeting prep, and we had to work through this disagreement between our COO, some senior VP level people, and so really we just learned to over communicate expectations is a key, probably to any relationship, whether it be at work, personal, anything like that. And having clearly defined rules about how we're going to engage as well is important, because it was immediate, so there's a little bit of flexibility there around phone calls versus email, but at the same time, people aren't always as responsive to certain types of communication. So
it's a good lesson to learn. What would you say out of your year and a half as a leader is your most significant leadership lesson that you've learned?
Leadership lesson. I have grown a lot. I'm going to phrase it in that, answer your question that way, in how to deliver constructive criticism, constructive feedback. It's difficult, especially when in my position, I went from being peers with some of these people to being their leader, that I had to completely change that relationship, right? Obviously, to a certain degree, we're still comrades and friends, but there has to be a level of respect and separation there as well when I have to be serious and genuine, and I guess firm but gentle, whatever. However you balance that with giving constructive feedback.
Did you learn that from kind of having the experience where it fell flat?
I would say the miss was maybe even me not being as direct as I should have been.
Okay.
Was me trying to temper it a little bit instead of just coming out and
hitting it head on.
Hitting it head on, trying to manage the relationship a little bit too much maybe, instead of just coming out and saying, hey, these are the deficiencies, being very fact-based.
Sure.
Which is the things I did have in the back pocket, but I was trying to ease into it. And that person, I had to know their personality, which I learned about more in this experience about their personality needs to be very much like almost bullet points of this is what I saw, and this is how the consequences of this, and this is the behavior that we need to change.
That makes sense.
So.
Okay. How would you say that past leaders and mentors have shaped your leadership style today?
That's a good question. It could probably go on for many, many minutes. I'll kind of speak to what most people probably won't speak to, which is I've actually probably learned as much from bad leaders as good leaders. Something that I crave and really value for myself is opportunity and development to kind of like go outside my comfort zone. And I've had really good kind of stretch opportunities, but I haven't always received really good coaching and development
from your leader,
hands-on from my leader. And so I think that has encouraged me to really dig into that part of my role, which makes it harder really on the leader, as I'm sure you know, as well as it's a lot more work than just assigning tasks, right? So that is a big thing I learned from former leaders.
That's great. And then lastly, what is your most rewarding aspect of your role as a leader?
Most rewarding aspect is seeing someone kind of like overcome that weird obstacle, that's something that's probably beyond what they thought they could do. It's just like probably the very same feeling like a parent feels or a coach feels when they achieve something. So that's really cool to see, is when I can put my own like pride aside and let them own something and risk making a mistake or risk falling on their face. But even if they do that, they overcome it and produce a great quality product or whatever.
Awesome.
It may be.
Well, that's all I got. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely.